is how you begin to sort of develop a sense of dispassion. This is called seeing things as they have come to be. In other words, the potentials of your past karma will come up into your awareness. And this is largely what a lot of distracting thoughts are in your meditation. It's just past karma just kind of bubbling up. And instead of doing anything or creating anything out of them, you just want to let them go on their own. You see that they're going to go on their own anyhow. So you don't have to destroy them, you don't have to create anything out of them. And this is how you begin to sort of let this process of becoming naturally begins to unravel. And finally, what you see is things simply arising, stress passing away. And the Buddha says even at that point, the sense of things existing or not existing doesn't occur to you. All you see is this process of continual arising and passing away. This is when you begin to let go of any kind of becoming that would come. And you let go of any desire to deal in any way, either to drive things out of existence or to keep them going. Because you see that just the concepts of existence or non-existence at that point don't really apply or don't occur to the mind. Now the Buddha says once you reach this point, you totally let go of the sense of location that was created by the sense of clinging and becoming, and that's when you attain freedom from limitations. You're no longer defined by your desires, you're not defined in any terms, even if existing, non-existing, or both, or neither. And this, the Buddha says, is the greatest pleasure. Now sometimes the question will arise, is, in this experience of the greatest pleasure, do you still exist or not? And Ajahn Suwat, was one of my teachers, said, hey, when you've got the greatest pleasure, you're not going to care whether you could be described as existing or not existing or both or neither. That's not an issue anymore. And you realize that the reason you created a sense of self to begin with was because you felt by having a sense of self, you'd have a sense of control, that you could manipulate things so you could create a sense of happiness. Once you've got the greatest happiness, you don't need that sense of self anymore. You can drop it. And that's the meaning of the not-self teaching, is that you don't need a sense of self. Many times when the Buddha says there's no self, we feel like we're being deprived. That someplace down the line they're going to take our self away. What he's actually saying is, hey, look, develop a sense of self that's skillful, responsible, reliable, intelligently compassionate, with intelligent self-esteem. Keep that going until you don't need it anymore, then you can drop it. And you'll drop it not naturally. So that's talking about the end of the path. For the purpose of tonight's talk, the important thing is that you realize that we're talking here in terms of strategy and skill. Many times we hear, becoming is a bad thing. You think, well, I'm just going to abolish becoming. Clinging and craving are bad things. Let's just try to drop them and pretend we don't have them. It doesn't work that way. You use a strategic paradox. You have to develop a sense of becoming, using craving and clinging. Clinging in the forms of clinging to habits and practices, clinging to views, clinging to an idea of who you are, so that you can create a state of becoming that allows you then to look at things with more dispassion. And that's how you let things go. So you're using desire, you're using clinging, eventually to overcome desire and clinging. You're using your sense of self so that you eventually go beyond any need to define yourself. In other words, the Buddha didn't play gotcha. The idea of saying, here's this wonderful goal up here, but if you have any desire for the goal, sorry. That's not how the Buddha taught. He said, look, desire intelligently, cling skillfully, and you can get to the point where you don't need to cling anymore, when you don't need any desire anymore. I'd like to conclude now with two stories from the forest tradition. One is Ajahn Lee, who was my teacher's teacher. One time he went into Bangkok, and there was a senior monk in the Bangkok hierarchy who was giving the forest tradition a hard time. And it turned out this senior monk was now sick, so Ajahn Lee went and would sit in the room with the monk as he was sick and meditate. And there are lots of stories about Ajahn Lee having really powerful meditation. I mean, people would sit in his presence and they would just kind of get concentrated because his concentration was so strong. At any rate, he was just sending a lot of energy into this sick monk. And the monk said, "What are you doing?" And Ajahn Lee says, "I'm making a donation of quiet." And the senior monk said, "Well, whatever it is, keep doing it, okay?" And as he began to get recover from his illness, Ajahn Lee started teaching him how to meditate. And the senior monk became quite a good meditator. Now, having been a scholarly monk, at one point he said, "Now wait a minute, as we're meditating here, getting into concentration, isn't this creating a state of becoming?" And Ajahn Lee says, "Yeah, that's precisely what we're doing." And the monk said, well, I thought we were practicing to get rid of becoming. And Ajaan Lee said, well, it's like this. Suppose you have a chicken that lays eggs, and you want to understand the process of what eggs are and how they're formed. Now, in the meantime, while you're trying to understand the process of how eggs are formed, you also have to eat. So you don't take apart every egg the chicken makes. You eat some of them. And then you take apart some of the other ones. I.e., you have to get a sense of well-being in the mind, because otherwise, if you keep destroying everything that comes up in the mind is going to get really desperate. And whatever insight you have cannot be trusted. It's just going to be grabbing at anything. Whereas if you keep the mind well-fed, okay, then you start examining, what are these eggs? What are they made of? How are they made? How can we stop making them? Then you're coming from a position of well-being, and the insights you gain are a lot more trustworthy. The second story is one from Ajahn Chah. Ajahn Chah once asked the people who were listening to him, said, suppose you're coming from the market and you're carrying a banana and you're carrying a coconut. And someone comes across to you and they says, why are you carrying the banana? Why are you carrying the coconut? And you say, I'm carrying the banana to eat. I'm carrying the coconut to go home and make a curry. And so the person says, well, are you going to eat the banana peel too? Are you going to curry the coconut husk? And you say, well, no. And the person says, then why are you carrying them? And Ajahn Chah says, how would you answer them? And his answer is, he said, you answer through desire. You're going to come up with an answer to that question because you want the answer. And so sort of in the process of asking this question, he shows you, desire has a purpose. And he says, basically you tell them, okay, you need the peel for the bananas because otherwise it's got to get mushy in your hand before you eat it. You need the husk for the coconut because before you curry it, you're going to need something to hold it in. And so even though they may accuse you of eating the peel and eating the husk, you know what you're doing. So, and it's the same way. You need desire, you need craving and clinging on the path. It's simply a lesson of learning how to use them intelligently. So you can create the sense of becoming that puts you in a position where you can really understand the process of becoming and let it go, not simply out of brute desire, but out of understanding, as you simply watch the process fall away. So that's the basic paradox of becoming, and that's the Buddha's paradoxical strategy that gets around the paradox and leads you to a true happiness that's free from suffering. So those are my thoughts on the topic. Gosh, this is a long talk. We break for 5 minutes before the question and answer. So if you want to stand up and stretch. Any questions? Yes.
I thank you very much for coming, and I bless you for your wonderful talk. It really always is great when we have a monk that comes who is, a lot of people talk about meditation, and there's a lot going on scientifically to prove the benefits of meditation. But for myself, what has proved the most beneficial is the meditation in the context of the teaching of the Buddha. And those teachings have helped me to find a path to less suffering very greatly in my own life. So that tonight's talk was your student, your novice was right. They said talk slowly.
Yes.
For a mind that is extremely reactive and wandering, to pull yourself back to listening to your talk against the wind and the cars was a little difficult. And I don't think that someone like myself could absorb these. I think this is a really great. Is it true to say it's a fundamental teaching? I mean, a fundamental place.
We're really talking foundation, yeah.
What?
We're really talking foundation here.
Okay. So then my that perception is correct, of mine was correct. I don't think I learned everything that I need to know about this teaching through your But that's not because you didn't teach it. My question to you is, what is a context to really take the time out from a busy life to do something that's critically important, like learning this fundamental thing? How long, I know it's not a question, I'm going to say how long, but what's the proper context of trying to really learn this much more thoroughly?
One, it's good to be able to take some time off from your busy life just to get started on the process.
Right.
And then secondly, learn how to bring as much of that as you can into your daily life. You try to set time aside every day just to be with the breath and not have any other responsibilities. Get up from your meditation, and also try to stay centered in your breath as long as you can as you go through the day, so you can giving yourself basically a solid point of reference as you go through the day, as you deal with other issues coming in, things you've got to think about, people you've got to deal with.
I've managed to really learn from the people who've taught here that is in fact my practice. I have no trouble practicing here in this room.
Yeah.
It's out there that is the whole real practice for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I find myself constantly throughout the course of a given day taking a breath,
Mm-hmm.
feeling where I am in my body, because I feel as though that grounds me, and I understand that that's a good practice.
Right.
Feel what you're feeling at the moment. I was about to say though, I mean, is it something you go to, do they teach this on a retreat for a couple of days to really try to get at this?
Takes a couple of weeks.
Take a couple of weeks. I mean, it could be it's a vacation for a couple. People take vacations for a couple of weeks.
Right.
That's not a long time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, but it's and not only. And the important thing is, as you're going through the day, not only that you're in touch with how the breath is going, but if the breath is uncomfortable, allow it to be more comfortable, so that it becomes a nicer and nicer place to keep coming back to.
Well, I'm in the baby step stage where I'm even really finally being able to recognize that I'm having a
Breath, yeah. Okay.
You know,
Okay, yeah.
I mean, because we come from a long line of highly reactive people.
Yes. You're talking about the human race, right?
I'm actually talking about my family. You obviously like to laugh, but we have a joke we call it Sicilian's Alzheimer's. That's when you forget everything but the grudge. Sorry. I was right, you did like the laugh.
Yes.
But, in the context of my emotional inheritance, everybody's got a story. We can play them all day long in our head.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I come from. That's what I have to kind of work for.
Exactly.
To recognize, be with, and then fall away from somehow.
Yeah. But it helps if you can distinguish, okay, would a longer breath now be more comfortable, a shorter breath? And start getting more sensitive to how the breathing feels in the body and what it's doing to your body.
Sometimes I try to watch it, like pretend I'm watching it coming out my mouth, like with a flame on it. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but I mean, for a mind that is very distractible,
Yeah.
and I may have attention deficit disorder. I mean, seriously, I may have a neurological, but if I can feel the breath coming out and almost like the dragon, it helps me focus on it.
Fine. Whatever helps you focus is good.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
I was wondering, you said, I thought I heard you say something about suffering being stress, and then you said another step is to find out what's causing the stress.
Right.
But I was wondering, I've heard a lot of don't figure it out, so I'm wondering if you could talk about the distinction there.
Okay, figuring it out, it's like any kind of skill that requires patience and time. And sometimes you look at something and you can immediately grok what's wrong. And other times you can't. In which case you have to learn, on the one hand, learn how to live with a little bit of ambiguity in your life. I don't understand this yet, but I'm going to watch it until I see. Because it does help to have a little, some background in the theory, so it helps, teaches you where to look. But also helps to have a willingness to learn how to trust your own powers of observation. And sit with something long enough until you, and the question always has to be in your mind. The Four Noble Truths are actually a kind of question. Where is the stress? Where is the cause? And just kind of look for that. And and as I said, sometimes you'll be able to figure it out quickly. Sometimes it takes more time. Yes.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on this. I really appreciate it. I was paying attention to what you were saying about how to approach the clinging and the right concentration. And I understand that. I've been to these talks where, to me, it seems like they're trying to reverse engineer the approach. That is, somebody has gotten to a place in meditation where he feels no pain. It's just fantastic out there. And love and compassion come automatically. And he's trying to tell me how to, you just try to feel love and compassion, and eventually you get there. That seems to be in reverse. And trying to get it in there somehow. Now I made some progress in where I am in my meditation practice, and that somehow propels me to, or pulls me. I mean, I get the clinging to this. I want to have some more. I like it. Right. But in there seems to be, for me to do this, I have to have some I don't know what else to call it, by faith.
Right.
That this will, because I don't even know what I'm looking for.
Right.
And is there an approach to, because at some point I know that whatever I reach will override, like, for example, problems I have doing meditation, and I'm clinging to things that are uncomfortable, but I still cling to them, and I don't know how to get rid of them. But at some point I know that I have faith that whatever it is that I will learn will make these feelings, or this clinging, this bad clinging, be within my mind. It will become reasonable for me, and I'll be convinced to just let go of that stuff.
Right.
But is there is there a way to approach it so that I don't have to cling on to it longer than I have to? Is there a shortcut to this?
The shortcut, yeah. The quick. What's we know?
Yes. Because he did mention he went out there he practiced austerity for 6 years, and I'm afraid I don't have that much time.
Right. Yeah.
But this is how he learned.
Right.
And yeah, I'm just throwing a question.
It's the impatient person's desire to how to be patient. One is try to focus on the question of where is there stress right now that's unnecessary, and just try to notice, what am I doing that's causing any unnecessary stress? Do I see the connection? Because the only way you're going to really let go is, one, when you see the connection between what you're doing and then the stress that's coming up. And then secondly, realizing that what you're doing is not really necessary. You don't have to do that. Now, many times the things that we're doing that are causing stress are things that we actually like. And so we turn a blind eye to the fact there's this negative side to what we like. But when you see the connection that it's there, and secondly that you don't really have to do it, that's when you let go. So that's got to be the question that you pose in your mind. But as for whether, how you're going to speed up the process, give yourself better things to cling to. Give yourself better things to cling to. Like the idea that, okay, I can develop a sense of calm. This is something I can humanly do. And that even though there may be all this turmoil around me, or inside my mind, there's still going to be a quiet spot. Look for the quiet spot inside. And just trust that it's there. Now, the Buddha is very upfront about the fact that, yes, this path does require a certain amount of faith. But it's faith that eventually is confirmed. The analogy he gives is of a person looking for a bull elephant in the forest. And you come along and you see some big footprints in the forest. But because you're an experienced elephant hunter, I can't say yet that this is really a bull elephant, because there may be dwarf females with big feet. There's more humor in the polycanon than people give the Buddha credit for. But it looks promising, Big footprints look promising. And so you just keep going. Then you start seeing scratch marks up in the trees. You say, well, this could be a bull elephant, but there are females with tusks, so we've got to look further. And then finally you get to the clearing, and you say, yes, this is a bull elephant. And so on the one hand, you don't completely say, for sure, this has just got to be true, but you've got a certain amount of conviction that this looks promising. and you follow through. And then when you actually see the results coming, that's when you've seen the bull elephant.
Well, that is what I'm trying to practice.
Yeah, yeah.
Doesn't the bull elephant then run away?
No. If he runs away, he's not the bull elephant you want.
Thank you.
Yeah. Question over here.
Yes, thank you also. With your talk tonight, I couldn't help but wonder if there is a limit to what you can achieve remaining, in a situation where you're working, renting. When I think of the stresses in my life, clearly there's a lot that I could manage better, and the concentration and the meditation practice, I've already seen the benefits in subtle ways, but also less subtle ways. And it's not that I'm ever expecting to reach a high level on this path, but I guess I'm wondering, is it possible? Are you constrained to a certain limit if you remain in a lifestyle such as living in Cambridge?
As with any skill, you have to learn to work within limitations. I mean, my teacher had a number of lay students they weren't in Cambridge, they were in Bangkok. And they were able to get a lot of really good progress in their meditation. Now, it required a lot of dedication, and there were certain parts of their lives where they had to say no to a promotion, realizing that promotion was going to take away a lot of valuable time to practice. And whatever spare time they had, they would give to the practice, and also find ways of taking the practice into their daily work. But it is possible. I mean, you are handicapping yourself by taking on a lot of responsibilities. But there's no place in the world where there are no limitations at all. You go to a forest monastery in Thailand, if there's no electricity, no running water, you've got to haul water, several hours out of the day. And physically, it's exhausting work. Mentally, you have a lot less that you're responsible for, which is important. But so within any situation, you say, okay, these are the limitations. You want to be realistic about the limitations. How do I work around them? And that's something you've got to answer for yourself. But as you've already noticed, whatever progress you get on the path is good progress. So keep with it. Yes.
Could you just mention a little bit more about right livelihood and your understanding around some of the subtleties in that?
Okay. Of the factors of the Noble Path, this is the one the Buddha was most vague about. Now, there are a couple of points that he made. There's certain kinds of commerce that you don't want to get involved with. Selling slaves, selling animals, selling meat, selling poison, selling weapons, or selling intoxicants. Avoid those. The only other cases I can see where the Buddha actually talked about particular occupations being really unskillful. And it's interesting how he approached this. First off, there was a professional soldier comes up to see him. And apparently they had two kinds of soldiers in the time of the Buddha. One was, you were drafted, and the king's soldiers would come into your village and say, okay, all you guys got to go out and fight. But there are also people who did professional training to become soldiers. And this one professional soldier came to see him one time and said, look, I've been told by my teachers that if you die in battle, you are going to go to the heaven of the heroes who die in battle. And what does the Buddha think about this? And the Buddha says, don't ask. And the guy says, no, I really want to know. And the Buddha says, you don't want to know. But the guy's insistent. So finally, after the third time, the Buddha says, if you're engaged in battle with the desire to see these beings and other people die, so you're engaged in your greed, anger, delusion, passion for all these unskillful mental states. If you die with these unskillful mental states, you're going to go to the hell of people who die in battle. And the soldier breaks down and cries and says, see, I didn't want to. Buddha said, I didn't want to answer this for you. And then the soldier said, no, I was just upset that my teachers had lied to me. So and then he abandons his soldierly ways, and there's a second case which is very similar, where this actor comes. This is one of the reasons why you don't see actors and actresses in Hollywood consorting with Theravada monks, because they say, if you give enjoyment to people, then you will go to the heaven of laughter. And the Buddha says, no, if you're acting in such a way that's going to give rise to greed, aversion, and delusion in your audience, okay, you're doing something unskillful, you're going to go to the hell of laughter. i.e. people are not laughing with you, they're laughing at you. And again, the actor breaks down and cries for the same reason. So, the Buddha didn't go around saying, hey, you, that's a bad occupation. But if people were serious, asking, this occupation I'm engaged in, and the question the Buddha always comes back with is, okay, what kind of mind states are you cultivating as you're engaged in that? And if you find that you're engaged in cultivating unskillful mind states, change your occupation. Yeah. Yes?
I'm interested in the word progress that was used, because I'm also interested in the word awakening, because it doesn't seem, I just get confused about this, about waking up being, whether it's an on-off thing or it's something by degrees.
It's a gradual process, because what you're doing as you engage in the path, let me back up a minute. The awakening is the end of ignorance, and the word ignorance in Pali, avijja, means not only lack of knowledge, but it also means lack of skill. And any kind of manual skill. Say, you've got some practice being a painter or being a cook. When you first start out, you really don't know your ingredients that well, but over time, you get to know the ingredients better. You get more sensitive to what they are capable of and what you're capable of. And it's that increased sensitivity that will eventually give you the ability to have a kind of a breakthrough. The Buddha's analogy is of a gradual slope and then a sudden drop-off. So
And
it's,
is there more than one?
there are actually 4 levels of awakening. Yeah. So progress is possible and real and necessary. Now, you may have been to retreats where they say, there is no good meditation, there's no bad meditation. That's because your typical weekend retreat is a pressure cooker. Where you say, okay, I've got to get something out of this. It's either going to the beach or I'm going to meditate. And if I'm going to meditate, I want something to show for it. And that's you're setting yourself up for a really bad weekend. And so this is one of the reasons why they tell you there's no such thing as a good or bad meditation. You've got to just sort of learn how to be with whatever's there, which for a weekend meditation is a wise teaching. For a lifetime meditation, you've got to have a sense of progress, what you're trying to attain and the steps that you're going to follow as you attain it. Yes?
Earlier in your talk, you mentioned what the factor was right view. And you made a comment along the lines of right view at the wrong time. And I was curious if you could elaborate on that. I wasn't sure.
Suppose you know who the right person to be the President of the United States would be. Put you in a room full of people who are not going to agree with you at all. You just keep quiet about the view. And you learn how to talk to them politely. And if they bring up, other issues, they bring up politics, you learn how to avoid the issue. Otherwise, you're not going around trying to club people with a view all the time. Yes?
I was interested to hear them use the word clinging in relation to practices, and I hadn't heard it before. Because I think it was being empathetic to have a clinging relationship with the practice, like holding on to it too tight, like it's an anchor, and it's like any kind of, neediness or desperation or fear. So I was interested in, I think maybe it's just, the connotation of the word, but I was interested.
I think the problem is the connotation. But also, there really are times in your practice where you are needy, and you really need something to hold on to, and it's good to have something there that you hold on to. The word for clinging can also mean to feed, and there's healthy feeding and unhealthy feeding. So think of this as a source of nourishment of your practice. And when you find a good source of food, you're not going to let it go easily. So you hold on. Yes.
I've been practicing TM for quite some time, and I've lately been doing this kind of meditation because I think it might be a better fit for me, just in terms of, wearing it like a garment. It feels like a gentler garment because it doesn't involve they're similar in that you simply gently bring back the mantra or gently come back to the breath again. And what I find is that I'm doing both
Mhm.
in every meditation.
Mhm.
And I'm just letting that happen too.
Mhm.
And so maybe I'll be this kind of schizophrenic.
Well, and actually in Thailand, it's usually combined at the beginning. There's the typical mantra would be Bhutto, which means to be awake. You boot with the in-breath, toe with the out. And you repeat that long enough so that you can help kind of remind yourself to stay with the breath. There will come a point, though, where the mantra becomes burdensome, when you realize that you could stay with the breath without it. And at that point, you can let it go. So if you find that you need it, that's perfectly okay. Or if you find that it's kind of, you're there in the background because it's been so,
It's habitual.
it's habitual.
I don't feel as though I need it.
Yeah.
It just comes.
Yeah.
Because
Mhm.
it's been
Yeah.
many years.
Mhm. But
Habit.
yeah, it's a habit. But make your primary focus the breath. And if the mantra's in the background, fine. No problem. Yes.
Hi. As I'm sure you know, basically the Buddha spoke in Magadhi, and that was translated into Pali, and then we've translated from Pali into other languages. We have no other records of Pali besides the Buddha's teachings, and also his teachings were transmitted through word for a long time. I'm just wondering, how do we know that we've got the right message?
Put it to test. Try it. Can you get the mind to settle down? Because it's. This is where the experience originally came from, the mind. It went through languages and texts and everything, but it's got to come back to the mind. And that's the proving ground. So if you find that you focus on the breath, and the Buddha says you focus on this way, and you gain these experiences. Part of it's like learning any foreign language. Is that you've got to learn how to get kind of a visceral sense of what the words mean. But the ultimate test is this sense of, am I getting results? And he once said that the important teachings that he left behind were basically qualities of mind. I don't know if you've ever seen the book Wings to Awakening, or heard of the Wings to Awakening. But it's basically the Buddha's, at one point toward the end of his life, he gave a list of 7 sets of dharmas. He said, okay, these are the important ones. And they're almost totally qualities of mind. Things like conviction, concentration, discernment, equanimity. And those are pretty obvious what they mean. And it's just simply a question of how do you induce these qualities in your mind. Once they're there, then they're the proof. Okay, this is what the Buddha was talking about, and this is what works or doesn't work. One more question? Yes?
You talked about abstraction very briefly, and you mentioned mathematics in that context. And I wasn't quite sure how that related to states of awareness, and I'm asking because they spend a lot of work in abstraction.
Okay, well, there's, the Buddha talked about 3 levels of becoming. There's the sensual level, there's a level of form, and there's a level of formlessness. Dealing with infinity, you would be dealing with formlessness. Dealing with other mathematical concepts. You get some people, when they think about math, they will actually think in terms of the numbers. Others will think in shapes. And the shapes or the numbers, those are forms. So you're kind of on a level of form there, as you're dealing with that kind of thinking. I understand these are illegal in this room. So, the post-it says to end. Okay. The Q&A is over. Tea is available downstairs. You can have your tension tamer. And thank you for your attention tonight. Thank you.
Could I just ask a few people to help with the hall? We're going to reorganize the hall, so if anyone can stay, that would be great.
Okay.
And if you aren't going downstairs, take some of the white chairs with you down to the dining area.
I just wanted to say thank you because your description about non-self was like